Political cartoons can be a serious business, and if you don't believe that, just Google Denmark, 2006, cartoon, and the Prophet Muhammad. The job description of a political cartoonist must include some kind of section on exposing the pretense and hypocrisy of those in public life and playing it all for laughs. Sometimes, though, that can get them into trouble, and the profession itself could well be in danger as the digital age renders its output outmoded, or at the very least, sends cartoonists scrambling in search of new platforms. The Listening Post's Flo Phillips now on two of Britain's best-known cartoonists, Gerald Scarfe of the Sunday Times and Steve Bell of The Guardian.
They've been known to incite protest, rally the masses, even help bring down dictators. The editorial cartoon, the painting of a political picture in broad brushstrokes, can be funny, but the subject matter often is not.
The political cartoon is an immediate opinion. Of course, we have people who write opinions in newspapers, but you've got to wade through a couple of thousands of words. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, I'm not sure if that's true, but you know, that is the thing, that a cartoon can hit you smack in the eye like that. When you open the paper, there it is.
Cartooning is about illustration, very much. It's about visualising, it's about getting to grips with this flood of imagery we get more and more these days. I start here and I think about what's going on, what I've been hearing on the news, what's current. It's entirely down to me to decide, and the difficult thing is to try and think of a way to do a cartoon around it.
Meet The Guardian's Steve Bell and his Sunday Times counterpart, Gerald Scarfe. Combined, these two satirists have produced almost 100 years of cartoons, drawing controversy, using the power of the pen to expose both the politicians and the politics of the day. Are they on the same page? Not literally, but they're often on the same topic.
I work on the Sunday Times. That's really only once a week that I have to be thinking about a political idea. I only really have one crack a week whereas Steve has, 3 or 4 goes at something. He does a lot more work than me, and he puts in a lot more hours, but he has more of a palette to work from at the end of the week. Many of the ideas have been done by my compatriots, so I've got to think again. By the time it gets to Thursday or Friday, I should have something kind of bubbling away in my mind, and at the moment it might be Syria, the Ukraine, obviously, and I suppose Obama and Putin are always arm wrestling with one another in one east-west situation. Those sort of things go through my mind, but I don't actually do anything about it. And when an idea comes to me, I just sort of plunge it onto the paper immediately.
My approach is very different to Scarfe. Everything he does is about that size. He stands at the table and hurls the think about. Me, I'm like this. Everything I do is about that size, and it's much more tightly controlled. Because what I do, I'm a comic artist. I do comic strips, essentially, and even the bigger cartoons are actually just like a bigger frame of a comic strip. There's a completely different aesthetic going on. Also, I have far more slots. I have 8 a week, he has 1. The thing about drawing cartoons into paper, it's actually a very simple process. It's me, I do it, and I send it in, and it goes in the paper. Obviously, there is editorial remediation. If I do something naughty, or use too many bad words, or there might be a problem with libel.
An apology and a rap on the knuckles might be the only repercussion for cartoonists working in some countries, but in others, cartoons can be explosive. You don't even need to be the one drawing them. Just last month, 2 Libyan politicians were facing the death penalty for using a cartoon in their election campaign deemed insulting to Islam. Their sentences were commuted, both were fined. Back in August 2011, Syrian cartoonist Ali Fazat didn't get off so lightly. He was victimized for satirizing Bashar al-Assad, an attack that was as vicious as it was symbolic. His hands were broken, his pen silenced. Other cartoonists, even those not working in oppressive circumstances, have received death threats, lawsuits, jail sentences, all for leaving their mark. And that's because people in positions of privilege understand and fear the potent mix of power and punditry that flows from the cartoonist's pen.
If you can make a world leader look ridiculous, then that's much more powerful to use humour to bring them down than to show them with sort of dripping fangs of blood. It belittles them more. To be laughed at is probably one of the most deflating things. If you think that a person is a tyrant and you're frightened of them and they instill that fear in you, then they are still powerful. But if you make them look like a buffoon, then power evaporates.
Cartoons are essentially caricatures, a word that comes from the Italian caricare, meaning to load or exaggerate. And that's exactly what they do. They exaggerate their subjects for comic effect. Serious political cartooning got its start centuries ago in Italy. By the early 18th century, William Hogarth had given the style a very British flavour. His satirical series are seen as a forerunner to the modern comic strip. And you can draw a straight line between Hogarth's work then and what Steve Bell does at The Guardian today, almost 300 years later.
The sort of rich tradition of things like Hogarth, it's the sort of thing you are dimly aware of. But when you start doing it, obviously then you take a much greater interest. And of course, the more I've been doing it, the more interested I become in them and see how marvellous they are and what an amazing precedent they set.
A tradition with a lot of history. But what about a future? British newspaper cartooning seems to be the preserve of a group of men in middle to late age, surrounded by stacks of paintbrushes and pen pots, rather than laptops and tablets. When these men finally put down their pens, will there be a new generation of political cartoonists waiting to pick up where they left off?
It's quite a sort of weird and obscure and rare skill. Not many people want to do it, actually, but there are some really good people coming up, young people, young cartoonists, younger than me anyway.
Let's hope that there'll be newspapers for them to work in. I think the death of newspapers probably is threatening to cartoonists. When you think I'm in a newspaper and I'm fighting against headlines, I'm fighting against advertisements, fighting against brilliant photographs, it's my job really to try and capture the reader as he turns the page and arrest their attention and, and try and make my point as quickly and hard and simply as I can.
It's told as if a tale whereby newspapers are dying. I think that's overplayed. There will always be a need to have something in your hand to look through, to read, to laugh at, to pore over, which you can't do with a screen, you can't do with a tablet.
And that is one thing, maybe the one thing, that newspapers still have over other media. The cartoon, that in a single image and a very few words can say it all.